Okay, Trey. Hi, Trey. Just talk to me to make sure you're still on the system.
Well, it's yeah.
Yeah. I can see you. Good.
I'm
Go
so
ahead. Go ahead. Talk.
well, yeah, and so that's what the video that I've been making. I've been really working on two things
Okay. What's the
simultaneously.
video about?
Well,
Bearing in mind that our listeners before could only hear my side, not your side. That was a problem. Okay. Go ahead. What the video is about the Nephilim? Yeah. You've done some stuff on it before. So what's
yeah.
new?
Well, I'm actually quite a bit late on getting this out, but it'll be good, and the people that have been looking forward to it, they will have benefited from the. Well, I think they will because they're going to be getting stuff that I'm fairly certain you're not just going to find out there on YouTube, and you're certainly not going to find it on your mainstream stuff. So I've got the Nephilim DVD that's about to go out, but more than that, I've been working on another video which is on Noah, and in fact that's going to be the title of it. And I'd like to see this out in ample time before the Noah movie comes out in movie theaters, which has got Russell Crowe is going to be playing Noah, and I think that gets released on March 14th of
Okay.
2014.
Yeah, interesting. Let's talk about two things. First of all, the Nephilim thing,
Right.
and then maybe later move over to Noah. Okay, the Nephilim. I mean, one thing which sort of struck me is there's a huge amount of interest at the moment, and whenever anything comes up with the Nephilim, people
Uh-huh.
just people just love it. They really want to hear about it. They really want to know about it. Why is that the case? I mean, why do you think people have suddenly got such an interest in this bizarre thing from Genesis 6?
Well, first of all, the media's for years have been pushing alien stuff further and further into people's living rooms, and you've got shows like Ancient Aliens, and I think that a lot of not just Americans but people around the world, they know that there's something off about these shows, and they know that the answers are deeper than people coming from other planets and far more interesting.
Hmm.
And there's some basic reasons why, and all of these things tie in together. And that's what makes it fun. Whether you're talking about the alien stuff, or you're talking about supernatural phenomenons, the
Mm.
Illuminati, or
Mm.
Luciferianism, or giants from the ancient past, it's amazing how many dots connect on all of these things that would otherwise seem, very much separated
Okay.
in the topic ranges.
Let me sort of narrow down the question a little bit more. Now, I've been a Christian for coming up to 30 years. Yeah, about 30 years, you never heard a thing about it. Now you start hearing an awful lot about it. Why do you think there's such a shift in interest between, let's say, even now and 10 years ago?
Well, you're living in an information age, and these are strange participles of the Bible, but the ideas are certainly not new by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, many of your early Christian commentators, this was, they write about this as if it was just common knowledge. Somehow this got lost in translation, and a lot of the biblical schools, the schools of theology, they were teaching this view that Genesis 6 related to this line of Seth.
Hmm.
So that was, that you had sort of these these evil sons of Seth, if you will. And that's how they were interpreting that passage. They were trying to evade something strange going on in Genesis 6. But the problems that you run into in doing this are that you've got reference to these things throughout the rest of the Bible, particularly when the Hebrews are entering into the Promised Land. You're hearing about grapes that are take a couple of guys to carry. You're reading about giants, and we're the size of grasshoppers in comparison to these guys. I think that's Numbers 13:33. I could be off on that. But you've got King Og, you've got the sons of Anak. So you've got hints of this that are the backdrop throughout the text. They're certainly not the forefront of the Bible, but you've got this backdrop of these kind of issues going on during those time periods. And when you're looking at the other cultures, you're going to find no shortage of strangeness, because these were, in a sense, their gods. And when you're dealing with Luciferianism, or you're dealing with pagan worship of whatever garden variety that it is, that's what you're worshiping, is you're worshiping these entities.
Okay, so I mean, I'm not sure. One thing where I mean, personally, I can see two sort of aspects why people suddenly have got this increased interest. One of them is through enhanced media. I mean, everybody has now got 500 TV channels, lots of documentaries, and there are a lot of documentaries within this sense going around about strange phenomena, probably driven by viewer ratings, where these TV channels need to have something exciting, and they latch onto this sort of thing. And obviously there's a lot of evidence of this stuff around. There's another aspect. I mean, I would say maybe there might even be something like a spiritual aspect, that people are just aware that something is not quite right, that the story we've been told for many years is not quite complete, and that there is more to it, and that people are just, number one, looking for more. It's like a spiritual thing, but also, and I would take it even one step further, and that might be maybe the third angle, that there is something in the air, that something big, weird, strange, possibly even amazing is happening. I mean, as Christians, we believe that Jesus is coming back, and that his return is not far off, or imminent. To say that. Or a lot of the indicators which Jesus talked about before his return. If you have like a checklist and you go down your checklist, it's like check, and depending how you interpret them, almost all of them can be checked. All the indicators. But so, I mean, how would you comment on this? I mean,
well,
what do you think is it? What's funny about in German there's a term called Zeitgeist, which means sort of spirit of the age, or an understanding of the age, and every age has got something typical, and our age, it's really bizarre. There's something weird as well, which I can't place my fingers on it. Okay, Trey.
And it's interesting that you would use that particular word, zeitgeist, because this might be one of the fundamental things within people's questioning, because Zeitgeist, this was also the name of a very popular internet film that went up, and the thing was literally, there's so many videos at this point that'll walk you step by step through, all of the film is embarrassing in the scope of how many things were just directly false in a film like that. But this is also what's been happening with a lot of your media stuff, and I think that's why people are hungry, and I think that's why they'll latch on to something, because if you're diligent and you're able to push through all of the mainstream parroting and chitter chatter, and really go through and peel at the details yourself, which is what I find myself doing day in and day out, you come up with different answers than the mainstream people do. My answers are not that you have men coming from other places. It's not my opinion. Other people may disagree with that. But you've got, with this Nephilim stuff, you've got two different trains of thought that have really been pushed. One has been from the Christian community, and that is, there's nothing to look at here, and there's, these passages need to be explained away a different way, no matter how extreme or absurd that other way, would ultimately take you. And then the other train of thought is the New Agers and crowds like this have been running with these ideas, and they're pitching you what, in my opinion, is sort of the Blavatsky view of the world, the Blavatsky, Alice Bailey type of themology. And these are the same type of themologies that are coming through your television screen when you're watching Ancient Aliens, that are identical to the belief systems of Adolf Hitler, who was a part of the Thule Society. So this idea of there being beings that came in prior to a flood and had genetically inserted themselves into mankind by whatever mechanism you want to ascribe that, is by no means a new belief. But I think that two different chords of people have been pitching this two different ways, and neither one of them are correct. One of them is just straight up, feeding it to you as if the occult is correct, and the Christian's way of managing it has been to dodge the issue entirely. And both of these, in my opinion, are not only wrong but dangerous.
Okay. We've got one big problem, yeah, also from the Christian point of view, and that is that we find massive skeletons that they've been dug out. Now, there's a lot of controversy around it.
Sure.
I'm not sure whether you've got images of the skeleton there, but when you check them out, they all come, oh, this is a fraud, this is something else, this is just some artistic thing, and so on. But one thing which really struck me is there was a newspaper article from about 100 years ago, and they had some giant skeleton about, I don't know how, but giant, meaning more than 3 meters tall, more than, 9 feet tall.
Right.
And it was quite a big attraction. And it was in a newspaper in 100 years ago. I think it was the New York Times. And you could see a black and white photo as well. And in those days, manufacturing these things was a little bit harder than what it is today.
Right.
So basically, what you're saying is, as Christians as well, we need to deal with this, with this thing, in a real way. And the Bible talks about it, and therefore we need to address it from a biblical point of view.
Yeah, at bare minimum, and I don't know how large. I mean, guys will argue and debate how large these giants get, but I can tell you this is a solid certain. Well, what you're reading in when you're reading about David and Goliath in the book of Samuel, the measurements for Goliath, and people will argue these, but they should come up to about 10'6". So maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. Some folks try and push that, but that looks to be about what the numbers are. And you've got not one or two, but you've got dozens and dozens and dozens of articles, particularly leading up to about the 1950s, that are going to cover giant skeletons being found. And you've got some remains of these still, but a lot of these are going to be found on Indian land. So and you've got a number of things going on here at once. It's not just the giants; it's other anomalies like these elongated skulls that really seem prevalent down in places like Peru. Okay, now look at the architecture down in these areas. So here in America, you've got mounds and things in places like Ohio, and really there's a lot more of them than there are sort of attractions made out of them. Like you've got some in Nevada and you've got some in Ohio, but they really do dot the American landscape. These get a lot larger as you're headed down into South America. So as you're heading into areas, where you're talking about Brazil, and of course climax is there, and coming through Mexico. But when you get down there in Peru, you've got these enormous megalithic structures in which you're finding all sorts of remains that are just, they're flat out weird. Mm-hmm. And some of them are structurally different. This is not all done by head binding. Some of these are structurally different than a human skull. Now, if you hop over to Egypt, Michael, where you're also finding these megalithic sites where you've got enormous stone that was, that is moved to build these pyramids and other structures that are in Egypt, you've got quotes by Petrie, who, when I was growing up, my favorite Egyptologist to read, this is the real Indiana Jones type of guy. This was a guy that when he says something, he's not like your mainstream little, chitter chatter guys that are up there playing their little games today. This is a real guy that is delivering you information. And you're finding quotes by this man where he's talking about races and new species of people being found there in that desert floor, and some of these he's referencing, of course, as giants, and talking about tools that are going along with them. So, where are the artifacts for these things now? I don't have that answer. I can just tell you that very credible people are writing about these. Now, when you come over here to the Americas, right, in the United States, and you're talking about articles from the New York Times and things, that seem to sort of fizzle out in about the 1950s, a lot of these are found on Indian ground, particularly ritual Indian ground is what these are found around. And that's what those megalithic sites really are. A lot of these are blood sacrifice, very violent, very worshiping the dark gods type of things, where the blood was flowing through, the streets of the village as we're cutting people's hearts out. Let me read you a quote here from Vine Deloria. Now, this is an American Indian attorney, very well known here in the States, but the man was an American Indian and did studies into this. He wrote up an article that he called Holocaust of the Giants, the Great Smithsonian Cover-Up. Now, I'm not going to read you all of it, but I've got some excerpts here. Let me just read you one of them. He's saying here, some of these old county and regional history books contain real gems because the people were, and when he's talking about real gems, he's talking about giants being discovered at these sites, unusual artifacts. Real gems because the people were not subjected to rigid indoctrination about the theory of evolution. They were simply astonished by what they found, and back during those times, they were honestly reporting it. Okay, so the insinuation by just this very statement alone is that there's dishonesty in reporting now. But also he's referencing here that, that it does not go. I like this particular quote because he's covered a lot of ground in one sentence, that this conflicts with the indoctrination, as he calls it, of evolution, and that you're finding the records of this in your old county and regional history books, and that the people were just simply reporting what they found without someone, politically correcting them out of talking about it. Now, when you're dealing with a quote from Abraham Lincoln, I think it's from 1896. I don't have it in front of me. The quote might not be verbatim. But Abraham Lincoln, and this is a president of the United States, he says, in the eyes of that ancient species of extinct giants who wandered the mounds or helped build the mounds of America have gazed on Niagara Falls just as ours do now. This was part of a speech that he both wrote and delivered that he gave up there at Niagara Falls just briefly before he became president. When he became president, there are no more quotes that I'm aware of that reference this kind of thing. But here again, you have two very credible speakers that are commenting on something that your mainstream folks today would very much shy away from. So what's happened that has changed that? I can't answer that for you, Michael. But the artifacts are there. You're finding weird skeletons, and you're certainly finding no shortage of quotes about this. And then when you look back in ancient history, you're finding the people talking about this as if it was common knowledge. I mean, these dots connect pretty seamlessly.
Okay, right. Just a point about, so basically the point you're making is a lot of it is archaeological. So we've got a lot of archaeological evidence about what has been happening with the Nephilim. How would you sort of tie it up with the relevance to today? What's the relevance for today? I mean, we've got all this stuff in the past, and there's a lot of evidence that these creatures roamed the planet in the past. Some people say most of it was before the flood. Some people say some of them were still around after the flood. And then we've got the stories of Goliath, and when you look at the measurements of Goliath, the guy must have been really, really big. Okay, Trey, can you comment on that?
And you can substantiate Goliath's size is that's easy to substantiate. That you've got and you have coffins, by the way, in the Egyptian Museum. Now they won't let you take cameras in there, But you might could. I'm trying to find somebody that's maybe snuck a video out of the Cairo Museum. There's some rooms of that museum they won't let you videotape, but this is not. What I'm telling you is not hearsay or whatever. I mean, people that I know that have walked through the museum, and guys that are very credible to me, who I've personally spoken to right after they've left the museum. They've got sarcophaguses in that museum that are at least from nobility, if not royalty itself or pharaohs, that are 14, 15, and 16 feet. Well, let me just stick to 14 feet because I know that there's sarcophaguses in there that are 14 feet tall. Now, what is a sarcophagus? If you look at a sarcophagus, when they take mummies on tour, the sarcophagus is not terribly longer than the guy is that's going to go in it. I mean, the sarcophagus is actually built for the guy. So, and this is a number of them. I don't know how many they've got in there, but they won't let you photograph some of this stuff. But what is the relevance, you asked? Well, the relevance is that we need to know what our history is. You've got two entirely different, just on a base level, you've got two entirely different views of history, and you've got one of them that's mocking at the other one. And so you've got your current science themology that is saying, oh no, it's, everything evolved. You used to be a monkey, or wait a second, maybe it was a monkey that bred with a pig, which is an article that I saw recently. And you've got this kind of stuff with no tangible shred of evidence. There are no bones for monkey people, and there certainly are not bones for monkey pig people, if that's what we're looking for now. But then you're finding all of your physical evidence that you're finding on the ground disagrees with this. So I've got the people that have got no evidence for what they're saying. They've got a bunch of drawings and charts with no evidence to back it. And they're mocking at the people that have got, wealths of stuff. Wealths of stuff. Right? And they're also their current science theories disagree with every single written record known to man. You have to believe that every single document ever produced, right, about anything historical up until 150 years ago was just completely bogus. You have to, I guess you have to believe that, to believe their themology. And then you have to compile on top of that they've got no physical evidence. So I have to take all of this on faith. I have to believe charts and graphs for which there is no evidence. No, I think this is, I think it's quite serious. And one of these is saying, what I am saying is that I are accurate, right? And this particularly applies when you're dealing with your Bible. The other histories, when you're dealing with Egyptology, you're dealing with your Sumerian records. These people are loosey-goosey, but their stories, or their these things that we've sort of made into myths and old legends, are rooted and based in things where the people are trying to express to you something they thought was, that they perceived as real. They're trying to tell you something. They're not just spinning their wheels and drawing stuff on walls, and they just had some spare time that afternoon. They really are trying in the best way that they can to represent to you things that they saw in the ways that they perceive them. And a lot of these are pagan cultures. And they viewed, so if you've got some really big dudes that are more powerful than you, they, often, the guy with the biggest gun wins. So these are the kings and the gods, right? And when you're dealing with demonic stuff, well, none of that's really changed to today. That's what Luciferianism is. What you've seen is you've seen a shift, and occult stuff sort of go behind the shadows. So it's not as prevalently covered. But nothing's changed about any of that. Your spiritual reality is what it is. And if anything were true, your people in the ancient past were much more in tune with that than people today. Even if they were into dark stuff, at least they understood that it was real.
I mean, you've got this with the Egyptians. I mean, they pretty much knew what was going on there.
Well, what all these ancient cultures believed, and it's interesting, this is what I believe that the Catholic Church is going to begin pitching. You know, and I don't mean to pick on the Catholics or anything like that, but I've seen too much of their literature and too much of their Jesuit stuff in particular.
Yeah.
I'm not going to go too far down that road by any stretch of the imagination, but let me tell you just in theory what I think is coming. What I think the sales pitch will be, and it could be a little bit different than this, or it could be a little way one way or the other way, but I think that this is the sales pitch that you've got coming to your doorstep, and that is that there's a parallel dimension, because this is what all their stuff is really jibber jabbering. Even when you're reading, Blavatsky and you're reading stuff that, or paying attention to stuff that. That's sort of making its woodwork through here today. This is where I think the pitch is going, is that you've got sort of a parallel dimension, and you've got quote-unquote aliens in that dimension that are pulling the strings on mankind. They've been here for quite some time, and they're sort of, controlling our world systems from behind the scenes. I think that is the sales pitch that is on its way to you, which is sort of a science mocked up version of exactly what every ancient document is telling you. And that sounds a lot like demons to me. You've got things in an invisible realm, but see, if I use the word dimensions, I sound more scientific than I say it's a spiritual realm. But whatever you want to call it, the reality is the reality. And I think that's the pitch that's coming, and it includes, or one of them, that's on its way to you. That you've got interdimensional beings, and and they're as close as the air between your fingertips. But they're probably your friends. That's part of the pitch. They're wiser than you and smarter than you, so you should probably listen to them. And this is not in any way dissimilar to what was being pitched in the ancient pagan cultures, right? Mm-hmm. You've got your underworld gods, you've got a bunch of them, right? And so, you probably should listen to them, and they're going to want you to do dark things. And the history of the world has always been dictatorships, and most of them are listening to their dark little underworld gods, particularly when you go back to the beginnings of your cultures. They made no qualms about this. I mean, this was the most important thing about the empire, whether you're dealing with the early dynasties of Egypt or you're dealing with Samaria. They're telling you straight.
Okay, it's an interesting point you're making there. So when you look at all the pretty much all governments through history, whatever you find is you find a lot of wars, and you find that a lot of governments were ultimately coming to a point where they started slaughtering people on a record level. And it doesn't matter which nation you look at. You can look at Eastern Europe, Western Europe. Western Europe is pretty much 2,000 years of slaughter, really, since Europe has been around. And there's hardly been a century where there wasn't a major slaughter of people. I mean, I just need to remind you of this is Western Europe, okay? Just look at Hitler, look at Napoleon, look at the First World War, which was just total madness. And then look at all the religious wars in the 15th, 16th, and 17th century, where there was whole, full slaughter at times throughout Europe, full-blown war between different sides. Go before this time, and you've got the same as well, where it was all about conquering territory, and one tribe was fighting another tribe. People came from the east, and it's as I said, not a single century where there hasn't been or hardly any generation in Western Europe where there hasn't been a major war. Look at Eastern Europe, the same thing. You know. One thing I have to think about, and when Jesus was tempted, the devil came to him and he said, "Look, you've got all these kingdoms, you've got all these, all these things. Can you see them?" And he showed him all his kingdoms, and he said, "Look, I'm going to give them all to you if you fall down and worship me." And Jesus obviously responded, "You shall worship your God and no one else." Yeah, God alone. And then in another instance, he calls him Prince of this world, and And I find this very interesting. So first of all, there's no denial that he has these kingdoms, and that he has a certain amount of power. But then on the other side, there's also a clear description of who he is, and that he is the prince of this war, a very powerful, entity.
It's a serpentine type nature, and the what's being referenced there in Genesis when it's talking about the snake or the serpent. I mean, this is not a serpent like you find on the ground, although it can be symbolically represented like that, and you're going to find that in all of the cultures. This representation of the leadership, if you will, of the underworld gods being very serpentine, which brings with it a lot of connotations, cold-blooded, But along with this is the word wisdom, and a serpent is not an animal that that really comes to mind in terms of a physical animal when you're thinking about wisdom. What's being referenced in these texts, and this is the same connotation given to the serpent in the garden, that it's the most cunning of all of the. So, what's being referenced in those texts is something a lot deeper than whether you're dealing with the pagan stuff or whether you're dealing with the first part of Genesis. This is something deeper in scope than we may often be. Oh shoot! Almost fell out of the chair. Than we may be giving it. Than we are giving it credit for, and what you're seeing there in Genesis 3, I believe it is you're seeing your setup for Jesus with the very curse that's going forth, because he shall crush your, he shall crush your head. This is what's told to the serpent. You shall bite his heel, and he shall crush your head. And this is from, again, the seed of the woman, which is an interesting statement, because the seed doesn't come from the woman; it comes from the man. And of course, when we get to Mary, the
genealogy.
Right, we're getting the virgin birth coming through Mary, and so you've got the whole setup really handed to you right there with the Garden of Eden. And if you rewind just a little bit before that, and this is a personal belief of mine, so I don't, you're welcome to evaluate it. It's certainly not in the Genesis text, but I'm a big believer in that, what's not said can often be equally as important as what is said. And in the Genesis story of the serpent in the garden, and this isn't a story, by the way, I believe the more that I study these texts, the more seriously I take every word on every page. When you're looking at that text with Adam and Eve, okay, and Eve is in the garden. Now, she's by herself when she gets to the serpent, and he's at the tree, the one thing that they're not supposed to eat off of. And the tree, just like the serpent, is something. This is not just a little apple tree or something. We're talking about something that probably in this modern age we could speculate on, but probably none of us would really have it right. But this was something very special. And the serpent is telling her that this is good to make her wise. It looked attractive to her eyes. Did God really say, no, you surely, you're not surely going to die? So Eve partakes of this fruit, right? These sales pitches are sufficient for Eve. And the text is specifically telling you that Eve was deceived. It says this verbatim about Eve. It does not say that about Adam. So when Eve brings the fruit to Adam, he's really got two choices. And Eve is really a part of Adam. She's not something created separately. This is a part of himself. And Adam, remember, is made in the image of God. Okay? He's an actual son of God. There's only three places you find this in the Bible. Adam, Jesus Christ, and the church. I give you power to be sons of God. That's a term that had not been used since Adam was made. Adam was a son of God. So here's Adam. He's faced with a choice. either he can say, good luck to you, Eve, right? And God will probably make Adam another Eve, right? If we were being legalistic, that's the right move for Adam to make. Good luck to you. I'm glad I'm not in your shoes, right? God, look, she ate from the tree, and I did the right thing. I told her, no more.
To be fair, there's another interesting take on this. One of them is that Adam got the command, not Eve, because Eve wasn't created at that point. So the fall of mankind could only be, you could make the argument at the point when Adam took from the fruit.
Yes, nothing. Right, absolutely. Nothing would have changed by just Eve eating the fruit. And Adam could have said, she's sinned, she's broken the rule, I want her gone, I want another Eve. But he didn't do that. And in my opinion, when Adam ate of that tree, he was entering knowledgeably into whatever the fate was that Eve had. He was literally laying down everything out of his love for Eve.
That's a key point. Can I repeat this? You said he did it out of love. Yeah, he probably knew exactly what he was letting himself in for, but his love was so great for his wife that he was prepared to share the same fate.
It was part of himself.
Mm-hmm.
So and this is almost exactly what you see with Jesus Christ, that God, a part of God himself, I'm giving up everything for what? What is the church referred to as? The bride of Christ. Everything here has a lower level meaning and a higher level meaning. So she, the bride has sinned. She's done all of these things, right? And she's made herself tarnished, right? But I am going to, you see, through Adam, the sin enters. But through Jesus, the blood covers. What you're really reading is a very beautiful love letter from God to mankind. And God is not against you. And when you're talking about your Illuminati and all of these other spooky little characters, these people have been with you the entire time. The spirit that is behind them. Not the actual people, but that's what you're dealing with. That's what connects them together, is you're dealing with all of the qualities of Lucifer, and you're dealing with hate, and you're dealing with war, and you're dealing with violence, and you're dealing with cold-bloodedness and bloodshed in return for what amounts to really trinkets and nothingness. And then the qualities of God, you're dealing with self-sacrifice, you're dealing with patience, you're dealing with all of the reverse qualities. And I would argue that one of the reasons you need Jesus Christ as your king is more than just for the payment of sins, but it's because we've redundantly proved that we can't manage ourselves. There's more than one purpose. We need a good king, because our systems always end up the same way, with a dictatorship, with oppression, with all of the qualities of Lucifer, pain, lack, right? God is a God of abundance, right? All of these things are the reverse. They're the opposite. They're, stress, fear. Fear is the opposite of faith. So these things are separated, and you can tell the nature of something by what it does.
Yeah.
And the creator of this place, when you look at everything from the cells and the detail that's in them and the DNA strands, all the way up to the stars that are in the heavens above, the creator of this place is somebody who puts a lot of love into each little thing and makes sure that it functions. So all of these qualities that you find in Lucifer are qualities that are not a part of your creator. And this is self-evident. If you didn't have one page of one Bible, of one thing, I would argue that by just being stuck in the natural world itself, you could deduce what I just told you. And that's without one sentence of one scripture of that Bible. And I believe that God himself would look down and say, I like that one. If you were to say, God, I have no idea who you are, but I'm down here on this planet, and it's clearly bigger than me, and I just ask you to love me, whoever you are. I think that he looks down and he says, I like that one.
Okay, there are a couple of points which I just want to emphasize, and I have to make a quick announcement, and then I want to move over to Noah. One thing is, and I think it's very important, it doesn't matter who you are, God loves you. I think that's very, very important. That's one message which I hear, and I think which is important to sort of work out here. God loves you, and it doesn't matter whether you're a Muslim, a Hindu, a Christian, or an atheist, or an agnostic. You can deduce from this word that God is real, that there is a God behind it all, who has created this, who has put intelligence into this design. And when you look at this world, there's so many factors which are so acute, which enable you to simply to be alive, that you can see that there is a love of God, trying to enable you to live, to move on for another day. And so it's important to just reach out to God. And even if we are talking about Jesus Christ being the answer, and you may not agree with this, but I would like to encourage you to just reach out and to open your heart to God and ask Him for truth in your life, and for truth to come into your life, and to reveal to you whether, to show you what we guys are talking about, whether it's real or not. Okay, a couple of things. I just to let you, listener, know how this works. Trey's in Texas, I'm in England, and Irina, our audio editor, is in Moldova, and she just came back to me and she said that there was a problem with the streaming. So the first part of this talk didn't get quite through. The latter half was getting through. Just to let you know, this talk is going to be back on tomorrow night. So we're going to repeat this tomorrow night. So UK time, it's going to be at 1 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and 2 o'clock in the morning. So it's going to be there, and it's going to be on YouTube as well. So we're going to stick it up on YouTube on our Radio Eden channel, which is edenradio.tv. So you can check out the talk as well on YouTube, especially if you missed out on the first half. Yeah. So many apologies for that. We had a software crash here. I didn't realize what was going on, but our good audio editor in Moldova just came back and said, stop, something is wrong. And we got it sorted now, and you should be able to hear us via the satellite and online as well. Okay, Trey, we talked about the Nephilim. The Nephilim obviously were in the time of Noah. There's a big argument that the flood, this great catastrophe which came over the earth, that part of the reason was that there was something had gone dramatically wrong with those, with mankind.
Yes.
The Bible talks about the sons of God, going into the daughters of man, creating hybrids. Yeah, doesn't mention the word hybrids, but that's the implication when you read the text, and sort of a deduction from it. But we've got a big problem. So suddenly we've got all these, genetically strange creatures roaming around on Earth. And I want to just, before you sort of discard it all, just want to put your mind towards Greek mythology. I was today looking a little bit at Indian, sort of not the American Indian, but Indian Hindu mythology. And you've got a lot of strange gods as well, almost, scaringly similar to what you find in Greece. And a lot of scholars believe that this goes actually back to a time before the flood, where you had these strange creatures who were roaming the planet. Okay, Trey, the days of Noah. Yeah.
I think that's what they're referring to when they, when you're hearing terms from, people that are really sort of in the clubhouse, if you will, and you're talking about Luciferianism. It's my opinion that that's really what's being talked about when you're hearing things like the Age of Aquarius. Now that's not something that your garden variety New Ager on the street that's bobbing loose in a tie-dye T-shirt is going to really have a grasp on. But you've got to understand that this is when you're dealing with Luciferianism. You're talking about a very, very, very serious and very intense, very ritualistic belief system, the same type of belief system that you're seeing in your pagan cultures. And this is going to take you, it's going to take you as deep and dark as you want to go. I mean, people like it's going to inevitably lead you to practices like human sacrifice. It's going to take you very, very dark. Even guys who were more open, the playboys of these beliefs, if you will, guys like Aleister Crowley are walking you through many of these rituals to where you're now, for example, Crowley is at one point, some of his writings, he's he's got these sexual orgies going on where there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of drugs and narcotics, and a lot of cocaine apparently at the particular parties that he threw. And this is sort of how he's got the both the women and the men involved, is that he's providing sort of these party favors, but he's pulled them into something pretty dark. And there was a woman that made it out of there, and she had apparently been there for months. This is before articles came out about him saying he's the wickedest man in the world, where he's apparently he's trying to get a goat on top of a woman, and he's trying to get both of these people to copulate or climax simultaneously. He's trying to get a goat on top of a woman during a ceremony, and then at the moment of climax, he's trying to cut the goat's head off, right? So that the blood will go everywhere, go into some kind of bowl or something. And he's getting frustrated in his own text because he's writing that he can't get this all timed out right. And and you're just reading this and you're realizing that the levels to the insanity are endless if you allow them to go there. And but this is where it has led Crowley at this particular moment, and it's going to take him darker than that. If you're to believe Aleister Crowley, he killed many babies, and he would kill young male babies, is what he not only writes but boasts of. So, and some would say, oh well, he's just making that up. I don't believe that. I think you're dealing with a guy that I think once you go hardcore into these things, that there's no end to where your depravity will take you, and that's what it is. And this is what you're seeing in your cultures. You're seeing entire nations doing this. You're seeing the women will bring their babies, and they'll have tears in their eyes to bring their little children up to sacrifice because they're being told this is what they're supposed to do to appease their gods. I mean, these are very deep, very dark, very sinister beliefs where you've got the drums going. You're not going to make your gods happy, and it's not sufficient just to kill your enemy. No, you've got to do this in terrifying ways on altars, and see. You're dearly trying to appease something. You're trying to evoke the attention of little spiritual goonish things. And I would, again, just looking at when you're taking the qualities of God and the qualities of Lucifer, I would tell you something that has no respect for a child or something that has no respect for is not going to respect you either in the end. You're just another play toy for its little, it's playing games with you for a little bit, and it's going to take your mind and all sorts of derangement. Your body has become a conduit. You are now a host, right, of something that you really don't understand, and it's guiding. It's got its fingers tightened against the wheel of your mind, and it's driving you like a good car, and you don't even know who the heck you are anymore. Just something carrying out commands for something you don't even understand. You see, and the Egyptians are writing about this. That's what an invocation ceremony is. So when they say in Luciferianism or in some of these little secrety weekety little clubhouse guys and doing their stuff, when they're doing an invocation ceremony or they're using that word, that's what you're doing, is you're inviting the spirit of something else to have control of you. So you're not even you anymore. You're not even, you've just surrendered all control to something that wants to kill you. And if that's not a stupid move, I don't know what is.
It's bizarre because when you look at most pagan religions, they all go sort of a similar direction, which they realize there's good and evil. They're not quite sure what to do with good, so they try to appease evil to leave them alone in some form or another. I think I think one of the things you were referring to is what the Mayans did with their temple, that they just slaughtered children, human sacrifice, no end of human sacrifice to appease evil, so that they would have a reasonable deal, a good deal with them. Noah, going back on Noah, what is your new video going to be about? I mean,
I'm so much looking forward to seeing this thing come forward. I think it'll be the best video. In fact, I'm not just saying I think that. I know that because there's so much to be covered in so little time. You're talking. I mean, look at how many subjects you've got. That most people, the common person, even listening to this audio right now, has no idea what the answers to it even would be. Like the long lifespans. I'm going to delve deeper into the Neanderthals and take you through the juvenile Neanderthal. This has been known since the 1970s. This needs to be something that people on the fly have an easy answer to when you're dealing with the long lifespans.
Okay, just to anticipate a bit, one of them, I mean, the Neanderthal has got a funny skull with the eyebrow sort of shifting out a little bit. You made a point that some of it has got to do with the growth, that the parts of the skull never stops growing for some strange reason, and so it suggests that these skulls are really, really old.
Well, your whole head does this. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, we become a little bit uglier over time, as we grow old.
It's true. Yeah.
So, if you take a sailor, for example, when he's in his 20s, his little hat fits, but he goes to a retirement party and that same hat barely sits on top of his head. And this same concept happens to some of your bones more than others. So these orbitals, or the orbital, of course, is the bone above the little eyebrow. Well, these guys keep growing throughout your life, and this is also for a functional reason as well, because your jaw. See, these parts fit together, and so you need a strengthening because you've got parts that wedge up in there that are having continual motion for your life. So they're sort of strengthening is what's happening. Now, when you're dealing with the juveniles in the Neanderthal children, and you've got a number of these, what you're seeing very slow development times, which is bad news if you are, a proponent of evolution and you're needing the monkeys to become people, because a monkey's development rate is at least 1.8 times as fast. It's almost double as quick as a human. Its maturity rate, being a little baby monkey that came out of mama to being, a fully developed adult. What you're seeing with these quote-unquote Neanderthal children, and these are identical structurally to you today. There's no monkey parts. There's no. These are human skeletons. They're tougher than you are today. The bones are thicker. The teeth on these things are incredible. The teeth on these people's heads could last hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years.
No cavities.
Yeah, your teeth can't do that, Michael. You're looking at incredibly stronger bone structures that are identical to a person today. But when you're dealing with the children, you're dealing with the juveniles, what you're seeing in the facial structures as well as the dental development, right, is you're seeing children, a child that looks like it might be 9 or 10 years old in its facial and structural development is actually in its mid-20s. This is incredibly slow development. Now, when you're reading passages in the Bible, for instance, where you've got, Sarah is 90 and the king wants to take her to harem, well, no king is going to want to take a 90-year-old to harem. What that text is telling you is that Sarah did not look 90.
Yeah. The interesting thing is what people...
Development. Let me keep going on that for a second. You're seeing development in young girls today where you've got girls hitting their period at younger and younger rates. And this goes hand in hand where you've got a 9.5 or a 9-year-old girl that is having, they're having menstrual cycles. And this, although not the norm, it's beginning to get this is just what it is. So you're seeing these, even with us, our development cycles are we're diminishing, Michael. And you see this in the genetics as well, that when as you stretch things out over time, we're weakening. Our bodies are weakening, and the time periods that our developments have sped up over time. And you're looking at a time in the past where things were a little different. But we've had the evidence for this since the 1970s. And so at least, you could argue for that, but solidly in our fingertips. And this is certainly not something that the scientific community is rushing to your children's fingertips, because it disagrees, once again, with their, they like the theory of evolution. And so here you've got something that doesn't jive with it, and something that would lend a lot of credibility to not only what you're reading in the biblical text, but what you're reading in the Egyptian text, the Sumerian text, the King's List. See, all these people knew how to keep time. They know how long a year is. So when they're telling you that a guy is if they're telling you a guy is 183 years old, they literally mean that. That's what they're literally telling you. And to me, I'm not only not terribly surprised, but I'm encouraged at the fact that you find the physical evidence of it, and not just a little bit of physical evidence. You've got hundreds of skeletons, and many of these are juveniles. So you can see the development. This isn't an anomaly that happened in one kid because he's got some type of a problem. You can see this redundantly. So that's one aspect. These long lifespans. This has been a big question mark, probably these are things that make many Christians shy away from their ability to say, I believe in the Bible, because they just simply don't have the answers. And what I'm telling you is that the answers are not only there, but they're exciting.
Yeah,
for a global flood is all over the entire planet. Go ahead, Michael.
Yeah, it's, I think did you do a film about 100 facts why evolution can't work? When you look at the evidence which is out there, you could probably list, I wouldn't say 100, but 1,000 and more of things which evolution can't explain, and inconsistencies with the theory of evolution. Again, I think from that point, doing a talk on Noah is quite important, because a lot of evidence which is abused or misused for evolution is actually stemming from the flood and from the period of the flood.
That's true, but I'm going to do the science stuff, and I'm going to beat up on their evolution theory a little bit, and I'm also going to help the people. I'm going to hand them some data about the. I think I can get them to about roughly the date of the flood. I can't put the date on it, but what I can do is I can get you the time frame, and it's not terribly long ago. You see when your cultures pop up in little settlements, and there's a lot of things you can measure. I'm also going to, but here's something else that I want to be included in that video. Not just the Nephilim stuff, but the how did the Nephilim appear after the flood? And I've heard some crazy. There's a lot of I won't call any conjecture crazy, but what I will say is I think you can put your finger on this, and I'm not going to go into it in this video. You're going to have to wait until the Noah thing. I'm going to save some surprises, but I think I can. I think I can lay right in your hand sort of an aha moment on how that occurs. And here's a secret to it. The answer is not that that one of Noah's kids had Nephilim blood in them. I don't, I know there are guys that I really like who are saying that. And that's fine. I agree with them on all sorts of other things, and I would never just nitpick somebody to death. But I do respectfully disagree with that opinion, and I think that this completely throws out. When God says that Noah was righteous and pure, it's talking about his bloodlines. It's talking about the people on that boat. He was not bringing over Nephilim.
Okay. Okay, should be interesting. Just a point. We are sort of coming to 1 hour, so that's pretty much the end of our program. maybe a couple of thoughts, and then we can close on that. One of them is I always thought about Noah that he was pretty much screwed all of his life. I mean, he lived in a violent generation. Yeah, that's pretty much from what we can assume what was happening and why God made an end to it all. That the people of his time, of his generation, were quite horrible. There was a lot of stuff really wrong and really, really ugly going on. Then you could probably assume that he was ridiculed when he was spending a phenomenal amount of time building this ark, where people probably thought, he's a bit eccentric, a bit of an idiot, and then the flood comes. There's no way for him to say, "Yeah, I told you so," and to stand there justified, because all the other people who would have ridiculed him weren't there anymore. And then, what people very often forget, they've got this romantic notion, the little animals, they go on the ark, and then he floats around, and then the ark settles down somewhere, and he makes a new beginning. What people forget is the earth was completely desolate at that time, and when Noah started again, he didn't sit in the Garden of Eden with Eve, where he could make enjoy life. But he was on a destroyed earth where everything, all the vegetation, the trees and everything had to slowly come back up again. Even worse, I would imagine that his life after the flood would have been really hard for a long, long time to try and rebuild society, rebuild a nation, rebuild a living for himself. Yeah. And it would be really interesting to, have the possibility to really see what it was like for him. I think it was the most horrific experience he went through, seeing all his world destroyed through the flood within a few days, and then coming back onto something which must have resembled like a desert, which was slowly coming back to life, and then trying to fight a living for the next 10, 20 years to get some sort of normality back into his life. And then the next thing, Jesus said one remarkable point, and I think it's, when you talk about Nephilim, and if you're listening to this because you are interested in this sort of thing, and this is that he said that when he's coming back again, it'll be like in the days of Noah, and then he carries on and he says, people will just get married and be given into marriage until Noah goes in the ark, and then it comes. But there's also the implication that maybe life and everything else is it's going to be very similar to what it was. That we experienced some similar stuff to what it was like in the days of Noah. Trey.
Michael, there's two sides to that coin on the Matthew 24 passage. Because you've got, let me state this, Michael. Noah was born for a purpose, and in that story you're reading, what I'm trying to give you in this video is I'm trying to, in 2 hours, Michael, I'm trying to show you that some of the most traumatic events that are even imaginable actually occurred. And I think I can put that in your hands, where even if you were the deepest, darkest atheist listening to this show, I think it's going to bring a light on in your head that the history is not what has been fed to you by your textbooks. That these events, I'm going to try and bring them to your fingertips and bring the science behind them. You're dealing with a man who was born for this purpose, and that's what you're dealing with. All of the bloodlines that you see that make up mankind today are going to come right there through this guy who's going to spend 100 years built on one single project, building a boat. Now, after that flood, you've got, when Jesus says, so as in the days of Noah, I want to focus on that a little bit, because you've got two parts of the days of Noah. You have the time after the flood, and you have the time before the flood. And I think Jesus is referencing a little bit of both. That time period before the flood, you're reading about literally, particularly, if you subscribe as I do and believing that there's accuracy in this unusual book called the Book of Enoch, you're reading about things being mixed with each other. And this is from the plants to the animals to the bloodlines to all sorts of weirdness that is going on. Okay, and this offsets balances no matter how you cut it. God has practical reasons for the things he puts in place. All right, he's not just trying to be mean up there. If you read the 10 Commandments, most of them are very functional. Don't sleep with your neighbor's wife. That's going to cause a problem. Don't go lie to your neighbor after you do it. Don't go kill him after you do it. You know, these are all to not cause friction. These are all going hand in hand with the nature of flourish in the place. And so you've got this mixing of things going on, which is what all of our science people are playing with, even as we have this dialogue, and perhaps deeper things than that. Now, when you deal with just right after the flood, you have this character that emerges named Nimrod, and I would argue if you do the math correctly. It would appear that Noah is still alive at the time that Nimrod is alive. Nimrod is your first Antichrist. He's building a one-world government. He's building his tower to his one-world government. And on all of the images of Nimrod, he's always deified. He was out there telling everybody he was God. You're going to worship me. Now, what are you reading about with your last world empire? Now, and I would conjecture, and what happens to Nimrod's empire? God himself knocks it down. What happens to your last world empire? God himself steps in and knocks it down. I would argue, and this is where your people get scattered. The people have been scattered, Michael, ever since Nimrod. Slowly, here we find they've been in little tribes and little settlements, and these have matured to become city-states, and then finally they became this ocean of separated nations. And now here we find ourselves in an age where many of those Old Testament prophets, the things that they couldn't even describe themselves, when they're saying an arrow is crossing nations and it doesn't return void, a city will be destroyed in a single day, and a buzzing shall come from her gates. See, these are things that you would have read in that day, and you would have said, what's this man talking about? Yet you're living in the hours of history where you're watching all of the tribes and the tongues and the nations that have been separated are coming back together. We're building our tower to our great God and our great leader that is going to come, the Antichrist, right? And on top of this, we've got all of the little tools to make those prophecies, which wouldn't have even made sense 100 years ago, to make these things a possibility at our fingertips for our little guy that is to come, our last little world leader, our last little Nimrod. And just like many things in the Bible, in my opinion, you can tell the ending by the beginning. And I think the case of these empires, of which Daniel said there would be 7, right? There's 7 ages of empires. And the first one starts right there where you see little Nimrod. Little bitty Nimrod out there on his big mound, shaking his fist at God and saying how powerful he is. And this is but he's controlled by not himself, but the demon behind him. And the same demon, Michael, that ran little bitty Nimrod out there all those little thousands of years ago out front his little tower that got knocked down, is the same spirit that will be behind your last guy, who will be out there shaking his fist and wants to do away with anybody that disagrees with him, right? Because we've got to get our little one world order thing done. You're living in the last pages of a story that began with Adam. That's what you're living in. And you're living in the most exciting of times. And all of the things that were written about by all of the prophets have led you to these very hours. And what those pages are telling you, all of them, is that you were born above things that you can't even see, and that you're an infant in something that you don't understand. And the act of faith is in trusting your true Father. So you can go chase after all the little Nimrods and all the little demons and all the little devilish stuff that you somehow know in your heart will end up poorly for you, but you're looking for a little momentary tickle. Or you can, as Jesus said, be about your Father's business. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And in that mannerism, you inherit what is unimaginable to your little bitty human mind right now, to your little mind, to my little mind. We can't even understand the place. We can't understand the cells, really. I mean, we know a little bit about how they work. We get all goofy when we look at the quantum physics, and then you've got your we've got little Michio Kaku who's going to sit up there on TV and tell you Elvis is probably playing in another dimension. But when we come out of comedy hour and we really reach out our hands to our Father, He is faithful to reach His hand back. And He knows you, no matter who you are, sitting on the other side of your radio or whatever. See, nothing in your life is a coincidence. And for your whole life, you've got a little, just like little cartoon, with a little angel on one shoulder and a devil on the other. You've got something that's continually trying to talk you out of paying attention. And that is what will kill you. The three questions that matter most, the same questions you would ask if you woke up in a ditch, are very worthy of your consideration. And I will tell you that I believe fully that there is a trash bin to this place. There's a little recycle bin. You can call it hell, you can call it Sheol, you can call it whatever. But if you thought this place was bad, if you thought that you had a lack of freedom here, you haven't seen anything yet. If you go there, I don't believe that you ever come out. I believe you're making fundamental choices here which are critical. And the bottom line to this is that you can't hold your middle finger up to your Creator and say, but I'm your son. You can make mistakes or sins, as they're called in the Bible, and your Father is faithful. Just like the parable, Jesus always talked in parables. You had the younger brother that squandered everything, and he's out there with the pigs. And but if I could just be a servant in my father's house, I'll just go back to him. I've lost everything. I've failed in every possible way. But the dad runs out with a robe and says, "Kill the best cow and let's have a feast. My son that was lost has returned." Jesus rephrased this 9 jillion times. What man doesn't go out for the one sheep that was lost? See, God is trying to give you a kingdom, but you have to want that. And He's a God of harmony. And you can't even imagine freedom in the place that you're in, because you're bound by 9 jillion rules. It's not just the 10 Commandments. You're bound by the physics of this place. You're bound by time. You wouldn't even know what it was like not to have those boundaries, because you and I are infants in something larger. And that's why faith comes into action. Faith is not believing in God. That would be ridiculous. That would be absolutely stupid. You can prove there is a God, and if you can't do that, you haven't spent any time with it. Faith is going a step further and saying, I trust my Father has got my best intent. That's what faith is. Faith is the reverse of fear. Faith has nothing to do with there's a God. Not to understand that is already putting you so far underneath the bar that it's hard to believe that it's real. But you owe yourself the time, and if that's where you are and you're listening to this radio show, and you think to yourself, oh, well, there's probably not a God because I read some science book and they told me that there was. Those geniuses that have got their world all figured out, the kind of guys who I spend picking through their data, and I can't believe these people can even tie their shoes. The kind of people you would never take on a river trip because they couldn't they couldn't even start a fire without a cigarette lighter that somebody else had dried off for them. These are the geniuses you're trusting with how the world was formed. Well, you go ahead about that, but you got a lot more faith than I do. Call me somebody without faith, because I don't have faith in that, and I also don't have time for that nonsense. Because these questions are relevant to me. Maybe for you, on the other end of the radio show, maybe these are irrelevant. Maybe they're so irrelevant that you'll put your faith in anything. But to me, who am I? Where did I come from? What happens next? These are pretty big questions. These are the same 3 questions you would ask if you woke up in a ditch. And I would highly recommend not waiting until your last breath to start working on that, because those are the only 3 questions that have any relevance. You're born in a place that should be utter randomness, yet it's not. It's made out of pixels, little particle pixels that are not random. You shouldn't even be here. And with inside that 3-dimensional construct, you're made up of nothing more than digital software. And you're consciously plugged in and you're running loose in a little biological machine you call a body for a little bit. Now, if you don't have the gusto inside yourself to ask those 3 questions, then let me ask you this. Do you deserve to go anywhere other than the trash gutter? If those 3 questions weren't worthy of your time, but you're going to complain that you should be worthy of an empire, well, my friend, I disagree. I think that you invest time in things that are worthwhile to you. And if you're satisfied with trinkets in this place, then that's probably the best you're ever going to get. So you better enjoy them. And I hate to be harsh about it, but I mean it's real. And this stuff is not rocket science and does not take a lot of your personal time. God has made this abundantly available to you. And the stuff that you can't find, you start asking for it and watch how it falls in your fingertips. You have not because you ask not. But these are my opinions. What do I know?
I think you made a few really important points. One point which strikes me is when you go through the Gospels and you see what Jesus was talking about, he talked more about hell than he talked about paradise and heaven. And he talked more about the great thing of you knowing Jesus Christ and of you coming to Jesus and finding his salvation is not that you make it into heaven, but it's that you avoid hell. And I think it's important to bear this in mind. There is a warning in the Bible which is quite severe, and you need to be aware of this warning which is in this Bible, and also make a conscious choice to invite Jesus Christ into your life, to make a new start with Jesus. Trey, just to sum it up, I mean, what we are doing here is, and some people may be asking, I mean, obviously we may have Christians listening and they think, oh, this is all a bit strange, or it's not, or I disagree, and that's great. And I would challenge you to write to us, or to get in touch with us, and give us some questions, give us something to chew on. But you may not be a Christian. You may have never heard about this stuff, and you may think this is all strange. This is weird. I don't know what to deal with. How to deal with this and what to do with this. What is this all about? How can I maybe enter a relationship with God? I mean, this might be a question you may ask yourself, and obviously this is what this is all about: is to understanding who God is, to understanding what this universe, what this cosmos, what this life is all about, and to come to some conclusion in your life as well. And I think Trey would agree with that. My urge to you is to just open your heart to God, to invite Him into your life, to ask God to show you what the truth is. It's not enough for for me or for Trey trying to convince you that Jesus is the answer for your life, but you need to come to your own conclusions, and you need to come to God for God to show you what is real and what isn't. And I think that is a key point. Trey, just in maybe a couple of minutes, what do you need to know? What do you need to understand about Jesus? How do you invite Him into your life, to put it just into very simple format? And then I think we have to close on this broadcast.
The way you do this is the way that you do any relationship. And you're going to have, when nobody else is around, when you're in your private time, right? The Luciferians are sure willing to do it. They set up grand altars and stuff to talk to things that they can't see.
We don't need a grand altar, though. So, that's I think that's a difference.
What you do is you sit down and you just begin to talk to the Lord and say, Jesus, if you're real, please just take me where I am. I don't know anything about your kingdom. I don't know anything about any of this. But I'd like to enter in, and I don't know what I have to offer. I don't know anything else. But I'd like to come. And I really don't even understand what you did for me. But please help me understand that too. Please help me understand who I even am. Because the truth is, most people out there don't even know who they are. And maybe I don't, and maybe you don't either, Michael. But these texts turn out to be real. We're infants in something larger than we understand. And that's the way you begin, and that's what fathers respond to. Lord, just hear me. I don't have anything to give you. But Jesus never said that you did. You're not, I mean, that's part of the entire idea. You did nothing to earn any of it. And you didn't even choose to be born into this life. And I'm telling you that just as you, I mean, look, you're not making decisions that are helping you breathe. You're not making, none of these. These were all just provided. They were just, luckily they were here. But it wasn't luck. See, somebody had you. Somebody had you covered. And I'm saying they're not planning to discontinue covering you. They put a lot of work into you. And that's as simple as it is. You go and you seek what it is that you want to find. And if you think the only things there are to gain are in this life that you're living now, I would argue for you to attack that first, because it is my belief, and I can probably demonstrate it to you, that you are eternal. You're not going to die. Your body is going to fall apart, but your body was never you anyway. You're a conscious being. Your brain inside your head is like a computer with a little cord going down that's connecting you to all the parts, so that way you can snap your fingers and you can wiggle your toes. But all those are just parts. See, you're consciously controlling those. The real you is not part of that body that you're running loose in. So that's what I mean when I say you don't even really know who you are. And this is and this is part of the discovery that you're going on. And you're in a place that there's nobody out there in a lab coat that really understands. I look at it every day, and I'm trying to figure out more details about how it works. And there's more than anybody else out there can understand. But I promise you, it's not Elvis in the next dimension. You're not the product of some monkeys humping. So, and if these are things that are in your head, and your head is full of distractions, what you need is precision and clarity. And that's a product of seeking out. If you want confusion, it's always sitting there waiting for you at the TV screen, at the next thing that's going on. You can distract your way through this entire life and then wonder why things came out wrong. Or you can get up and say, you know, I'm going to reach out to my Father. The picture is bigger than what you've been told. And your Father is waiting to hear from you. But I can't prove that to you. Because some of this you have to prove to yourself. Not from somebody on a screen. You can't trust me. You can't trust the guy. You can't trust any of them. Because this is about you on the other side of the thing. You have to figure these things out on your own. And there will be nobody that can help you but you at the end of it. And that's why I'm saying that it's my strong opinion. Now, you can go to a church and do this in front of a pastor or whoever if you want. But I would highly recommend that you on your own, of your own accord, get down on your knees and begin to talk to the Lord as if he was standing right in the room with you. And you see where that leads you. And if I'm lying to you and it takes you nowhere, then you've lost nothing. But if I'm telling you the truth and I'm right, then you've gained everything. So again, it just boils back to what's important to you. For me, I don't settle cheap. But a lot of people do. A lot of people do. That's what I've got to say about it.
Okay. Trey, thank you. We've got a couple of minutes left, and then we have to go back to our stream again. First of all, Trey, thank you very much for spending this time here on Radio Eden. Just a couple of details as well. You can get in touch with us. One possibility is you can go to our Radio Eden website, which is www.radioeden.com. I repeat, it's www.radioeden.com, or just Google Radio Eden. Should be one of the first which comes up. But you can also go to Trey directly, which is godinanutshell.com. Is this right, Trey?
Yeah, that's fine, man. Yes, that's right.
godinanutshell.com. There's also a YouTube site where you can see a lot of Trey's films he's already done, and some really interesting stuff on there as well. So if you are interested in evolution or the Nephilim as well, or also other issues which come up within Christianity, some which are maybe less colorful and but need addressing nevertheless. They are there on the YouTube channel as well. And again, Trey, the YouTube channel is called God in a Nutshell. Is this right?
Yes, this is you've got it head on the nail.
Yeah, okay. Just let me spell this. Is God, yeah, G-O-D, and then in and L, and then nutshell, N-U-T-S-H-E-L-L, nutshell. Yeah, like that. Or if you just go to a YouTube channel, type in Trey Smith. I think there's a basketballer by the same name, but you should find that all his videos should come up fairly quickly on the listing. Okay, that's that. This talk is also going to be on YouTube. Look under Radio Eden. The YouTube channel is either just type in Radio Eden or edenradio.tv. You get all the listings, and this talk should be one of the first listings soon. And you can sort of follow the whole talk as well. Apologies for the first half hour where we had software crash here and the live stream on the satellite as well as on our online channel was, I think it worked very badly or not at all at times. So fortunately, thanks to Irina, our editor in Moldova, the warning came through. I just didn't notice it straight away, and it was rectified. So anyway, that's all done, but tomorrow on Saturday the whole talk will be repeated again on Radio Eden, so tune in. Should be about 1 o'clock, and then in 6-hour intervals as well. Okay, Trey, thank you very much, and to all our listeners, a very good night. If you are in Europe, a very good evening if you're in America, and a very good morning if you're in the Far East. You know. And we will go back to our stream, so you'll find that there'll be a few, maybe 1 or 2 minutes of dead air, but it should be switching over fairly fast, and we are back to our normal programming. Okay, most important thing is don't forget to get in touch with us. If you have got any questions, you can do so. We will endeavor to answer them. We'll have a few more shows as well as they come up, and also please get in touch with us and you know, trying to look on God in a nutshell, see what's coming up. Bear in mind the Nephilim video will be there in a few days' time, and then the Noah video most likely in a couple of months. Trey, this is a plan, 3-4 months when it's going to be there, or faster? Are you still there, Trey?
Yes, I sure am.
Noah video, when is it going to come up?
I don't know a date for that yet, so a month maybe.
Okay, so maybe January, February time. Okay, so stay tuned, keep on track, and you can also follow us on Twitter as well. Twitter is Radio Eden, and Trey, God in a Nutshell, has got also a Twitter account, so you can follow us on one side or the other. Okay, thanks very much for listening here to Radio Eden and for spending this evening or late afternoon with us, or early morning, depending where you are, and would be great to hear from you. God bless and bye-bye from Michael here at Radio Eden.
Michael,